Hey guys, we are back with the third video about the brain. Again, one more reminder, I'm Chase.
I'm Parker.
And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and then another little thing about how to keep our brain healthy. Let's start.
Yeah, so first off, we have the frontal lobe, which is one of my favorite parts of the brain because it makes us human, really. Without the frontal lobe, we aren't the same person, really. And this is because the frontal lobe is what we use to solve our problems, to make decisions. And as Chase is pointing out, the frontal lobe is at the front part of the brain, hence the name. So it's pretty intuitive, just like right behind your forehead here. And yeah, like I said, it's responsible for our personalities as well. And it finishes developing at 25. I'm 22 right now, so I'm still working on developing this. And so this actually shows why it's important to continue to learn and take care of our brains. And we'll give some specific ways of how to do that. But it's important because our brains aren't finished developing until 25. And even then after, it's important to maintain good brain health because things can change still. So here's a little question for you guys, and think about it before you move on to the next part. But a person with an injury to their frontal lobe may have difficulty A, remembering past events, B, reasoning and making decisions, C, seeing, and D, sleeping. And think about the answer, and I'd actually encourage you to think about different brain structures that would affect each answer. But for the frontal lobe, the answer is B, reasoning and making decisions. And this is a really interesting example. This man was in a mining accident a long time ago, and before the mining accident, he was described by his employers as this: most efficient and capable foreman, a shrewd, smart businessman, very energetic and persistent in executing all his plans of operation. But then, as you can see, this nice little pole went right through his frontal lobe, and it affected his eye there, as you can see, but a lot more than just affecting his eye, it affected who he was as a person. This is a quote from one of his, one of his coworkers back in the day. He is fitful, irreverent, indulging at times in the grossest profanity, which was not previously his custom, wrote John Martin. So, I guess it was the physician. But this goes to show that the frontal lobe is a huge part in how we interact with the world, how we solve problems, how we conduct ourselves. It's kind of like the brakes of the other impulses of our body, maybe people do things and you get angry and you just out of impulse want to punch something, but then you think, no, that's a stupid idea, and you don't. That's the frontal lobe talking. And the frontal lobe has the final say in our actions, despite other impulses that we may have.
Okay, so we're going to go on to the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe sits right behind the frontal lobe. So we have the frontal lobe here and the parietal lobe here, and pink is just sitting right behind. And we'll show it here on the real brain. So we have the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe there. Parietal lobe receives information from everything you touch. So when you touch a dog, you'll use your memory to help you recognize that you're touching a dog. Your parietal lobe helps a lot with that. If you touch a table, your parietal lobe helps you recognize that it's a table and helps you understand the feeling that you are receiving from that table, that it's hard. And then it also helps you, this one's really important, in knowing where you are and how far from certain objects you are. It takes input from a lot of different senses, of course, the eyes, just other things around you, your touch, to kind of guess how far away things are, which is very, very important, because if you weren't able to do that, imagine everyone driving without being able to tell how far away things are. It would be impossible. There would be accidents everywhere. So it's very important that we have this sense still intact, right?
And then the occipital lobe, this is responsible for vision. And without our brains, all we see right now would be upside down. And as Chase is pointing out, the occipital lobe is just in front of the cerebellum and just behind the parietal lobe. It's kind of like if you patted the back of your head, it's kind of right there. And people say that you'd see upside down without your brain, and they think that our eyes are all messed up. But really what's just happening is that the way that our lens works in our eye, it's curved a certain way so that light coming from the top will go to the bottom of our eye, and the light from the bottom will go to the top of our eye. And so it's not that our eyes are messed up, it's just natural physics. If you look at a spoon, then the image will be upside down. It's the same way, same thing. But our brain is amazing, and it's been constructed to fix that, and it flips the image up, right side up again. It's in the back of the brain, and it helps us understand what we see. So pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And then here's just a little thing that you can do to trick your brain. So everyone just look right at the center dot. Just look at that center dot there and try to count the black dots. And it's just interesting. It's just a way to trick our occipital lobe a little bit, that every time you try to look at the black dots, they disappear. And of course the answer is there are none, but when you focus on one spot, you can see them like shimmering in the different areas there. Okay, so the happy and healthy part of the brain. This time we're going to talk a little bit about some addictions. So the first one is drugs. So this brain scan here is kind of interesting. This just is a scan of the brain, and all the yellow parts show active parts of the brain, and anything blue is inactive. Okay, and so with no drug use, as you can see, our brain is very active. We're using it all day, every day. It does a lot. It takes a lot of energy to keep it running, and that's good because it helps us function. But when people have cocaine, this is even 10 days without cocaine. I assume this guy has been taking cocaine for a while now. And even 10 days without, you can see his brain is pretty much shut down. He has some here. This is the back of the brain, and the occipital lobes because he's seeing. In the temporal lobe a little bit, maybe because he's hearing, but there's not much in the frontal lobe going on, which, as you remember earlier in the video, is important in personality and controlling our actions. So there's not much going on there. And then even 100 days afterwards, of course, he's gained some function back, but it's 100 days, that's a third of the year almost, and he still hasn't gained very much back, which is interesting to look at it this way, that we really should not do drugs. It's shutting the brain down and making it so that we can't function in a normal way.
And then to go off of this, another addiction that a lot of people deal with is pornography. And pornography works a lot like a drug, because with drugs, they feed off the reward system, which is in our brains to help us motivate, which helps motivate us to do things that are productive, like exercise, food, making connections with people. And what it feeds off that system by releasing an abnormal amount of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter responsible largely for reward. And so it hijacks this system, and pornography does the same thing, because as a human race, it's a beneficial thing to reproduce. And so when pornography, when pornography goes into our heads, we get kind of the same sensation as drugs. And because of that, it's really dangerous because it skews our brain like this. It skews our perceptions of relationships, of ourselves, of others. And so it can be really damaging. Yeah, it's really important to stay away from drugs and pornography for these reasons.
And then another good one to that is actually very similar to all of this too, because it again plays with the reward system in the brain and the dopamine, but it's technology addiction. And of course, technology is wonderful. We're reaching you, and we're able to have online classes during this time because of technology, right? It's wonderful. But if we're using it too much and not doing other things, it can be very harmful to us. This is a really, really good video, and we're not going to show it to you right now, but we're going to include the link in the description of the video so you guys can go and watch it. And it talks about how when we want to learn new things, this is what I got away from anyway. When we want to learn new things, a lot of times technology can distract us from that and stop us from learning those things. But we'll let you guys watch it and learn about this a little bit more on your own time.
And then the last thing is, we talked about things to not do, but it's important to fill your time with things that you should do and not just think about what you shouldn't do. And so, like we talked about before, fill your time with exercise, with hobbies that you enjoy. Instead of, obviously technology is great and it's fun to do with your friends, but don't make that the main thing that you spend your time with, because technology is engaging with things that aren't real as far as video games is concerned. But if we spend our time developing talents and skills that actually have an effect in our lives, then we'll be happier people, and we'll be more versatile, more skilled, and it'll be a lot more fulfilling than the feeling that you get once you turn off the game system. So we encourage you guys to do those things, and we will be back for our final video.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thank you.